بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Hello everybody, hope you are doing well. Today's lecture, our lesson will be about passive voice or passivization. As usual, we have to start with the objectives of our lecture. The objectives of learning the passive voice as a grammatical construction in English language. Of course, here include understanding passive voice formation, how to form passive voice sentence or passive sentence. Learn to form passive sentences using the correct auxiliary verbs and, of course, past participle, that's verb 3. Also recognize the structure where the object of an active sentence becomes the subject. Also to understand the optional role of the agent indicating who performs the action. Also, we need to know that as well. Also, to differentiate active and passive voice. This, of course, will be between active and passive constructions and their appropriate usage, how to differentiate these. To identify subject, verb, object, and agent in both voices, that is, agent and patient as well. Comprehend the shift in focus and emphasis between active and passive sentences. Of course, that is applying passive voice for clarity and emphasis sometimes, because this is one of the uses why we need to understand why we use the passive voice. Okay. Of course, that's using passive voice to shift focus and also to emphasize the action or result rather than the doer in passive sentences. To practice using also passive voice in various contexts like formal writing and sentences, of course, and let's say also in scientific reports. To master passive voice tenses, of course, and because we know that each sentence or each tense has its own passive voice, explore passive voice across different tenses: present, present simple, past simple, future simple, present continuous, perfect tenses, so on and so forth. Understand and the changes in auxiliary verbs. Of course, here we use verb to be generally, based on tense and their combination with the past participle. Of course, we have also one of the reasons why we use passive voice is to enhance writing and communication skills, in order to, as I said, to improve writing by varying sentence structures using passive voice for readability, and to develop critical thinking by analyzing when passive voice is effective. In addition, of course, to enhance communication by effectively using passive constructions in both written and spoken English. The key terms that we are going to focus on here in this lesson: passive voice, as we know, the sentence structure where the subject receives the action. Okay. Auxiliary verb, a verb used to form tenses, modes, or voices. Mainly we use, of course, verb to be. Past participle is also the most important part in passive voice, which is the verb 3 that is used after verb to be, generally ed form. Okay, but we have other irregular forms, of course. Agent is the person or thing performing the action, that's the doer of the action. Okay, in passive sentence, that's of course optional. Okay, it's generally preceded by. Subject verb agreement, of course, it is important to know that is, or to differentiate the object, that's the new subject here, if it is singular or plural, because the verb depends on this. Tense, of course, each tense, as I said earlier, has its own passive, so it's important to know the tense of the let's say, or the verb, okay, used in the passive voice. Active voice, of course, with the active voice, we know that is the active voice sentence method must be transitive. I'm talking about the verb must be transitive in this, because the active voice here, a sentence structure where the subject performs the action. So we have the subject followed by a verb, and the verb must be followed by an object. This object now, or can be changed into or can replace, let's say, the subject to form the passive sentence. Emphasis, focusing on the receiver of the action rather than the doer. Yes, that is the object rather than. So our focus, our emphasis will be on what the action, let's say action receiver, not that is not the doer of the action, which is the subject. Direct object, of course, is of course, or the object. We can say we have two types of object, direct and indirect. But here, generally, the object is the noun or pronoun receiving the action in an active sentence. So these are important terms that we are going to cover or to use in our lectures. As we generally start our lectures, okay, since we started talking about the passive voice in English language grammar, okay, we define it. It is passive as a fundamental aspect of sentence structure that plays a crucial or important role in conveying information and emphasizing different elements within a sentence. In this lecture, we will explore the formation, usage, and in the significance of passive voice constructions, as the passive voice is a grammatical construction where the subject of the sentence is not the doer of the action, but rather the receiver of the action. That is, here we have the focus is different. It's not the subject, it is the object. So the object becomes the new subject. This linguistic structure allows writers and speakers to shift focus from the agent, the doer, to the patient, the receiver of the action, as I told you, providing flexibility and nuance in communication. Throughout this lecture, inshallah, we'll discuss key concepts such as auxiliary verbs, past participles, subject, of course, subject verb agreement, and tense usage in passive voice constructions. Also, we will discuss when and why passive voice is used, its impact on sentence structure and clarity, and how it contributes to effective communication in both written and spoken English. By the end of this lecture, inshallah, we will have a comprehensive understanding of how to form passive voice sentences, when to use passive voice effectively, and how passive voice enhances language expression and communication skills. So let's start, with the passive voice and explore its intricacies together. Of course, there are some points or topics that we need to go through. Okay, the main topics of the lecture that say the first one is the past tense, the past simple tense. In fact, we have to discuss that is the tenses in general. Okay, the tense in general, which is important here. We have to differentiate if the tense is, let's say, present simple or past simple, or let's say future, let's say with a modal verb, or if it's the sentence is perfect with have, has, had, present perfect or past perfect, or sometimes if the sentence or the tense is in continuous tense, that's present continuous and past continuous. These are the main points that we need to discuss. Okay, so here, of course, as the other thing that we need to focus more is, let's say, verb to be. In this case, of course, we must look at verb to be and its types, because each tense is based on, or takes one of these. If I talk about present simple, to change a present simple sentence into passive voice, we need only is, am, are, and this depends on what the the object, if it is singular, plural, or I in this case as well. So if the tense is past simple, as here in this case, we use was or were. Also depends on the subject, the object, let's say the new subject, of the sentence, the passive sentence, if it is singular or plural, was or were. And of course, with modals, we use modals: will be, should be, can be, could be, must be, and this is for modals. For have, has, had, we use that perfect tense, we use been. So these are, let's say, when you talk about past participle, okay, tenses, that here we use, of course, as you said, the appropriate form of the verb to be. is, am, are, was, were, be, been, and addition, of course, being. By the way, being is here is only in the passive form is auxiliary. In active is not auxiliary, it is a gerund. Okay, I'm talking about being. Being is a gerund in active voice, but it becomes in passive voice as auxiliary. Okay, we'll come with examples, inshallah, when explaining with examples about tenses. So, for example, we can say, the chef prepares the meal, and this is active voice sentence. Let's say passive voice, we can say the meal is prepared by the chef. Look at this, we have the meal, okay, is singular object, and here in this case we use is. Why is here? Why not was, for example? Because the verb in the active voice is prepares. Prepares, the chef prepares, simple present. In this case, we use is or am or are, depending on what the object, if it is singular or plural. We have the meal, so it is one meal, so is. If we say the meals, it becomes are prepared by the chef. Okay, so it depends on what the object, if it is singular or plural. Explanation, of course, in this case here in the active voice sentence, the chef is the subject performing the action that prepares on the meal, that direct object. In the passive voice, the meal becomes the new subject, as I told you, receiving the action, so is prepared by the chef, who, of course, now the optional agent mentioned after, of course, by. We can say by the chef, but sometimes no need to add it. If you want to add it, it's okay, doesn't matter. Here are more examples, of course. Active voice, we can say the company sells products online. Sells what? Products. Products is plural form. Look at this. So in the passive voice becomes products are sold. Are sold. And again, look at this. Are sold. After are, we have to use the past participle verb here. Sell, sold, sold. Okay, sold is the past participle of the verb sells. Active voice, for example, she wrote the report. She wrote the report. The passive, wrote is the simple past tense. So we use either was or were, depending on what the new subject, which is report, the object, report, or the report. So the report was, since it's singular, we use was written. Past participle of wrote is written. Remember that. And this is another aspect or topic that we need to focus on, in addition to the object, then to the verb to be, and the last thing, that is what? The past participle of the verb. There's no passive without verb 3 or past participle of the verb. In this case, one of the uses, by the way, okay, or functions of using verb to be is what? Is either followed by ing in active voice, or in passive voice it must be followed by past participle. Like here, the report was written. Okay, the meal was prepared, let's say, okay, or is it prepared. This is what we mean by tenses. Okay, now depends on the tense. Present is, am, are, past participle. Past was, were, or past, of course, in addition to past participle. If it is, let's say, other tenses, we have other, like be, like been, like being. The following sentence is about being. For example, if I say active voice sentence, they are painting the house. They are painting the house. We can say the passive voice, the house is being painted by them. The house is being painted. So we use being. Why? Because the sentence is present continuous. So in continuous tenses, when there is ing verb, in this case, you must add being. And before being, you must add verb to be is are. Depends on the tense. If it's past, مثلا, they were painting the house, becomes, the house was being painted. So you have to differentiate the present continuous from past continuous. In each example, notice how the subject of the active voice sentence becomes the receiver of the action in the passive voice sentence, and the main verb changes to its past participle form, as I told you. The second topic, that is using passive voice for emphasis or focus definition. This passive voice here is often used to shift the focus from the doer of the action, that the agent, to the action itself, or the recipient, let's say, of the action, the patient. what undergoes or which undergoes the verb. It's used when the doer is unknown or irrelevant, or when emphasizing the action or result, or sometimes the patient or the object is more important than the doer with action, which is the subject. For example, here, excuse me, active voice, the students completed the project. Okay, the students completed the project. So here I'll focus more. Let's say the emphasis is or emphasizing the action. Let's say we can say the project was completed by the students. So the project here is, let's say, more important, let's say, than the students. Although it depends on, because our emphasis, our focus is the project, not the students. Okay. Sometimes we can say another example. The results will be announced soon. مثلا, the results will be announced soon. Okay, the focus is what? The results, not who will announce the results. Okay, the results will be announced, for example, soon. This is the future, of course, tense. Okay, but with passive voice, will be announced. Remember that. Also, we can say the project is now completed, for example. This is why we said emphasizing the result, that is, the project was completed. Now, explanation, of course, we talked about this. Okay, in the first passive voice example, the action of completing the project is emphasized. In the second, complete the result of the project was, being completed, is emphasized without mentioning who completed it. Here are other or examples to practice. The police caught the thief. We can say the thief was caught by the police. Or, for example, let's say they are building a new bridge. We can say, of course, here the passive voice emphasizing the action, building the bridge, that is say. So we can say a new bridge is being built. Okay, you know why is being built, because I said they are building. This sentence, active voice, is present continuous. In this case, we use present continuous passive. A new bridge is. Why not are? Because a new bridge is singular. Okay, and here the subject is new bridge, not they. Okay, as in the active voice sentence above. So a new bridge is being built by them. Now, passive voice emphasizing, of course, the result that the new bridge is now built. In these examples, the passive voice is used to emphasize either the action, the act of catching or building, or the result, that's the state of being caught or the completion of the bridge. Now, topic 3, let's say tense usage in passive voice. As I said, tense is very important. Definition: passive voice can be formed in various tenses to express actions or events in different time frames, such as present, past, and future. Even present, we talk about present continuous, present perfect, and present simple as well. Past is similar, in the similar case, I mean. And future, of course. Future general, we have will be, shall be, should be, going to be, must be, etc. Okay. For example, present simple, the report is submitted every Monday. Past simple, the book was published last year. Future, the document will be signed tomorrow. Or remember the example I told you earlier, the results will be announced, let's say, tomorrow or soon. Of course, for the explanation here, the auxiliary verb to be is, was, or will be is conjugated according to the tense. Yes, as I told you, it depends on the tense. And the past participle form of the main verb remains consistent in passive voice constructions across different tenses. As I told you, it's a must. Past participle of the verb is a must. Here are more examples, of course, across different tenses. Present simple, for example, the project is completed. Okay, that is, of course, simple present. And we can say also past continuous, for they were renovating the house. They were, let's say, renovating the house. We can say the house was being renovated. The house was being renovated by them. Future, we can say they will have finished. They will have finished. This is future perfect. Okay, they will have finished the work by tomorrow. We can say the work will have been finished by them tomorrow. The work will have been finished by them tomorrow. These examples demonstrate how the auxiliary verb to be changes according to the tense, while the past participle form of the main verb remains consistent in past, as we said, past passive voice constructions across different tenses. By exploring these elaborated examples, students can understand the nuances of forming and using passive voice effectively in various contexts and time frames, enhancing their understanding and application of this grammatical structure in English communication. To sum up this lecture, of course, as you have seen, okay, you need to understand this. The lecture on passive voice explored the following key aspects: formation of passive voice. Passive voice is formed, using a form of the verb to be, such as as I told you, is, am, are present, was, were past simple, been after have, has, had, be after modals, and being in continuous tenses as well, along with the past participle of the main verb. Of course, it is a must to use past participle of the verb after verb to be. The subject of the sentence receives the action instead of performing it, and the agent, optional of course, can be mentioned after by, as we discussed it above. Using of passive voice for emphasis or focus. Also, passive voice is used to shift focus from the doer of the action, the agent, to the action itself, or the recipient of the action. It's used when the doer is unknown, irrelevant, not important, or when emphasizing the action or result. Tense usage in passive voice, as we discussed as well. Passive voice can be formed in various tenses to express actions or events in different time frames, such as present, past, and the future. And even present, we have present simple, present continuous, present perfect, and past as well, the same in addition to the future. The auxiliary verb to be changes, of course, according to the tense, while the past participle form of the main verb remains consistent. That is, past participle is a must, is consistent, in the let's say the formation of passive voice. Activities for learning, passive voice: sentence transformation exercises, identifying, of course, passive voice, role play scenarios, writing exercises, discussions, and interactive quizzes, games were suggested as effective learning activities that you can see and, of course, let's say on YouTube, on Google. There are very many examples and activities you can find regarding passive voice. Overall, the lecture emphasized the importance of understanding passive voice formation, its usage for emphasis or focus, tense usage, practical application through engaging activities. So to master passive voice enhances, develops language proficiency and communication skills in English. And by covering these topics and engaging in related activities, students can gain comprehensive understanding of passive voice and its role in effective communication. That's it for today. Thank you. Have a nice time. And Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.